in hormones, well, take a look. I like this video that's playing. It's going to steroid hormone go right through the membrane because it's made out of fat or lipids. And what's kind of scary about hormones such as this is they can go straight to our DNA. And so we have a genetic situation with the DNA being altered and maybe producing some new product because a messenger RNA is going to be generated. That's why we have rules and laws about the use of some steroidal compounds, is that the result can be quite serious. Now I have a little note here about roid rage, but people on anabolic steroids tend to take other drugs as well. So it's a start for many and not a good start. Okay, so cells have receptor sites for specific hormones. So it's a nice tight association between the endocrine glands and these chemical messengers. GH, growth hormone, also called somatotropin. If we make too much early in life, then we are pituitary giants, such as Andre here. He was an impressive wrestler, but he didn't live all that long because that's a big workload when you're that large on the heart. Pituitary dwarves are normal. They just didn't produce enough GH when they were young. Now we have medical interventions that can boost growth if we catch it early enough for most. Acromegaly, this is sometimes caused by trauma or disease, but more often injectables idea. Thyroid gland, so this is one of the endocrines here at the top of the trachea. It produces thyroxine and other thyroid hormones that regulate lots of things in the body. If we see a goiter, that means the thyroid's sort of overgrowing to compensate for a problem. Now, usually it's genetic, but once in a while it's someone who's not eating enough iodide. That's why we have iodized salt. So that's called a goiter right there. Vitamin D can interfere with the process of thyroxine or thyroid hormone because, take a look at this. Okay, we may eat calcium in our food or as a vitamin, but without vitamin D in a partnership, then our bones are not going to absorb it very readily. So thyroid hormone has a lot of actions, and here's another one. Hyper, individuals that produce too much. The symptoms tend to be, they tend to be thin, rapid heartbeat, bulging eyes sometimes, or hypo. In hypo, they don't produce enough TH, and so they tend to gain weight. Slow heartbeat. They sleep a lot, right? They take naps. They sleep for 10 hours at night or 12. None of us are perfect, okay? So some of us tend to be maybe a little too much thyroid hormone. And so pay attention to your blood panels. When your blood panels come back, look at the thyroid levels. See where you're at. Right? Sometimes a little therapy with chemical therapy can change our life in a good way. PTH, parathyroid hormone. This is in a feedback loop. So let's say you don't have enough calcium in your diet, because the direction should be from our diet to our bones. But if the body perceives, hey, there's not enough calcium in the blood, then the body borrows calcium from the bones. And over time, years usually, we go osteopenia, it's kind of in between. Then a DEXA scan will show that our bone mass is diminished. All right, so have a cheese stick or some yogurt. Try to spread your calcium out during the day. Glucocorticoids. There's many different types, and they're produced here in the adrenal glands. So let's remember this. I'll be talking about these guys. They're perched on top of the kidneys. And this is why we can't go hitting people from behind. Right? sports they have rules about that because this is a fragile part of our body. Now there's a negative feedback loop, but that doesn't mean bad. It means good, because in the case of insulin, it's going to bind to receptors and open the GLUT gates. Why is it opening the gates? Because now sugar can pass in. So this is how we have glucose regulation. Now cortisol is going to reduce the rate of glucose use, and it's going to borrow from the muscles. You might think, why? Why would it borrow from the muscles? Well, let's say your glucose levels are low, and they've been low for several days. Then the body says, hey, this dude is going to pass out unless we get some glucose. So we got to steal it from somewhere. Searching. Muscles, man, pony up. We need your glucose. All right, so let's not go there. Let's make sure we have our blood sugar managed. Cortisone, nothing suppresses inflammation like cortisone. That's why we see it in asthma inhalers, injectables. I like to use ice, but there's times when cortisone is the best strategy, especially for deep tissues where ice cannot really affect. Do you remember adrenal medulla? That is the top of the kidneys. They can release epinephrine for the fight or flight response. Now, this is a good thing, right? Because we see the shadow of the creeper next to our doorway, and our body says, hey, lungs, heart, muscles, get ready. I'm sending you lots of blood because we're either going to fight this creeper or we're going to run. All right, so it has survival values, but coping with chronic stress that goes on for weeks, months, years, that can actually contribute and perpetuate the stress. So look at your life. How do you respond to stress? Some people overtrain. Some worry. Some overeat. We saw this during COVID. Many people did not cope well. Alcohol consumption, drug abuse, obesity. So pay attention to how you're coping. Try to find positive ways. One positive way is perception. Now, recent studies have shown that we can interfere with the production of adrenocorticotropic ACTH. We'll just keep it short. Because the way it works is we perceive stress. Hypothalamus tells the pituitary, fight or flight. And ACTH tells the adrenals on top of the kidneys, make cortisol. But maybe it's just a harmless thing we're worried about. So, perception. Next time you're feeling stressed, focus on your breathing. Maybe say a prayer. Change your perception. Like, oh, I hate driving in San Francisco. Instead, you can say, hey, wow, this is crazy, man. The guy just cut me off. Look at this. Oh my gosh. It's wild. Or next time someone's boring you to death, say, hey, this guy thinks I'm going to listen to his advice. This is funny. Okay. You get my point? Perception, powerful. Melatonin. During the day, melatonin shuts down because the pineal gland says, hey, we don't need to get ready for bed. But as it gets dim at night, melatonin kicks back up. So we have this biorhythm or biological clock. It works beautifully, except in midwinter. We might get seasonal affective disorder. And that's because our pineal gland is confused. It's like almost dark all day. And so steady flow of melatonin, we feel sleepy and depressed. So to treat this, open the blinds first thing in the morning. Some people buy a special light during the winter. So see, that's suppressing your melatonin. Don't take the pills, right? You don't need those because your pineal does the job. And if you get hooked on the pills, then your pineal is going to get lazy, and then you're stuck on those pills for maybe the rest of your life. Okay. Glucose metabolism. This is simple because we're just going to take glucose, turn it into glycogen, Where's glycogen? Glycogen should be, here it is. Okay, glucose is a huge molecule, so we're going to compact it down to glycogen. And then when we need it, we're going to make it back into glucose. All right, it's really a cool process. It's homeostasis, okay? It happens all the time in our bodies, except if we have diabetes. If we have type 1, that's inherited, and we often need medical mediation. But if we have type 2, which is just, the pancreas is not quite pumping out enough, but if we're good with our diet and our exercise, we can manage it. Insulin intolerance is often diet related because fat in the muscles and in other ways can interfere with the absorption of glucose. And you might think, well, who cares? But too much glucose becomes toxic. And that's why the kidneys, they jump in and you start urinating sugars because there's too much in the bloodstream. Now we do have this thing called hypoglycemia. Hyper, just like you would expect, deals with too much blood sugar. Hypo deals with not, and it's sometimes called rebound hypoglycemia. Consumption of, here I have it, simple carbohydrates, something sweet, and so it kicks their blood sugar up really high. It feels great, like you see in this chart here. We're happy, we're motivated, but what happens is we run out of glucose because insulin's doing its job. And then, I was going to try to show this, but it looks like we'll keep moving. What happens is now there's not enough glucose. Now here's your choice. Okay, the crash is hit. You can reach for something sweet because there's cravings for that, or you can eat a good meal and stay out of the crash, because the crash is hypoglycemia. And yeah, grouchy, sometimes I like this diagram, tremors, rapid heartbeat, hungry, sweating. Pay attention to this, all right? I've had many situations where people have passed out in my arms, and I have to get them on some solution, oral, to get their blood glucose back up. Insulin shock, okay? The brain and the vital organs require a steady supply. And that's what my video was going to show, was how without glucose constantly in our bloodstream, and calcium as well, we can't function. And so pay attention to this. Keep some almonds, keep some healthy snacks with you everywhere you go. And not just for you, but for someone else. Because you might find someone one day passed out in your arms, shaking, sweating from hypoglycemia. And hopefully you'll be ready for it. All right. Thanks for listening.